right, welcome everybody back to another episode of Aftershocks TV at aftershockstv.com. And today we're going to the Empire State Capitol, Albany, New York. As I'm pleased to have on the show with me today from industrial metal veterans, the Clay People, we got guitarist Brian McGarvey with me. What's going on, Brian? How you doing, man? Thanks for coming on.
Hey, yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Well, let's get right to it, man. Cult Hypnotica, band's brand new LP. It's out now and over at Records, man. And man, what a record this is, man. Start to finish. You know, anyone I think who's familiar with the band's catalog and history is going to really, really dig this record, man. And of course, it's an album that was written during the pandemic, but you guys didn't just write an album. It looked like you wrote about 4 of them. I said it was like 40 tracks you put together or something like that. You know?
Yeah, it was kind of strange. I made 24 demos, and then I gave them to the band, and we were kind of going on a hiatus for a couple months for the winter. So I moved from Brooklyn. I bounced out to Taos, New Mexico, and I was just going to, and while I was out there, the whole world shut down, So, I was expecting to be gone for 4 months, and it ended up being 29 months. So, because we had a tour with Stabbing Westward that spring that was canceled, and then it was like a year later, the same tour was canceled. So I wrote 2 more songs while I was out there, one being Cult Hypnotic and Destroy All Humans. So, and they just went into the studio and, worked on the stuff that I had submitted. So Dan Dinsmore played the drums to my demos, and then I redid the guitars, and that's how we did. I recorded remotely everything out that I put in. I recorded remotely out in New Mexico, which is pretty awesome about the state of technology these days. Is really it can be anywhere, and we have a nice studio, so I just send my tracks into the studio, and then they go through all the nice pre's and that, plugins and all that kind of stuff. So that's how we did it. We never really played any of the songs together until which is odd. We never did a record really like that. I mean, I guess the last record was kind of like that too. The Demon Hero record we kind of did the same way. But we always used to get in the room and jam, and flesh out tunes that way. But with the way everyone's lives are nowadays, And for me, I just like to. I'm just always writing. So whatever those guys, I submit everything to those guys, and whatever they can, whatever they're digging, they'll work on. But yeah, there's another 30 plus songs, that are kind of like in different stages. Some of them are pretty close to being finished, and but I'm always adding to that pile. So.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so is this is this a way that you can see you guys, writing, doing it the same way going forward, or is it kind of like, we kind of like it the other way better?
Well, the other guys live in Albany, and that's where I'm from, that area, Albany, Troy area, also. But I moved to New York City in 2009, and so I've just been kind of recording down there my stuff, and then. So we haven't really been like doing it the old way where we're just in a jam room jamming out, which is one of the things I love to do. I just love jamming, forever too, but it also, it's hard to sometimes rely on that to like, to remember the things you come up with or to structure on the spot, so I don't know. It works for me, but I'm open to, if those guys want to try different methods or they want to take on certain writing teams. But it seems the last 2 records, are stuff that I've pretty much submitted. And then, they end up being those structures for the most part. There's a few songs, maybe the second half of this record, there's, some of the arrangements might have changed a little bit. Those guys, which I'm fine with. I love everything. Anything they change, I've loved. Eric brought in the song Victoria Queen, so that was that's like, I think Dan just showed me a video that he made for that one, so we're gonna have a video up soon for that.
Oh, very cool.
So,
let me go ahead and bring in Dan. It looks like he's just joined us. What's going on, Dan?
Hey, how are you?
How you doing, man?
So
we're just talking, me and Brian, just kind of getting into the record, you know, talking about how, you know, you guys put together 40 tracks for this record. I mean, excuse me, just in general, during the pandemic, you wrote 40 songs or so. And he was just kind of talking about the process and how that worked. Now, in terms of the selecting the tracks for the record, I mean, when you've got that many to choose from, I mean, how difficult was that to sort of select which ones you're going to put on this record, you know, since you have such a huge catalog of them?
I think it was basically, you know, Brian would feed us mass amounts of material. And during COVID, I would go down to the studio probably like twice a week and record. And I think the pathway to what songs were being completed at that time was based on when Dan Neet was feeling something and started to delve into tune from a content and lyrical standpoint. So it was really, that was kind of where the flow went, was kind of when he was picking up on something and making progress on it. So, you know, typically we don't, you know, have any agenda anymore. Like we need to make this kind of record or that kind of record. So it was a pretty fluid process.
Okay, very cool. Well, let's talk about some of the tracks off the record. Let's start with the first single that was released over the summer, the track Cult Hypnotica. Which is, you know, I mean, I know we don't have Daniel here to talk about lyrical, you know, the lyrics, but it is a song that takes on the ills of groupthink. And so you know, obviously we've seen a lot of stuff like that going on with the years, you know, not to get into politics or anything like that, but obviously, you know, it's definitely a song that, you know, bands, like I said, fans of the band that have known you guys for a long time are going to really enjoy, and just industrial metal fans in general. So I guess talk a little bit about that track and what it represents and how that all came together.
Brian, you want to take a stab? And
well, you know, it's I mean, it's kind of like an age-old dilemma, you know. I think Orwell pretty much, you know, wrote the book on it. You know. And we see how valid it is to this day. You know, it's the same old, you know, just the faces change. But a lot of people don't seem to be able to see through it, though. It's almost like a lot of people would rather give up their discernment or ability to do their own thinking and allow some talking heads to do it for them. And so I think there's just this is like Dan's you know, just another wake up, just like our biggest song is Awake, you know, wake up, you know. So it's like, it's just more of that. It's more of that kind of a theme, you know. It's like the more that people can, you know, unearth some sort of truth in them, you know, in their own mind, what they discern to be truth, the more aware they can be, you know.
Yeah, and it's also getting a lot worse, you know. As Brian, it is an age dilemma, but you know, corruption of media is now affecting how you know, brains progress in younger children, and you start to see that, you know, the corruption of media, religion, politics, governments, all these types of things seemingly get more spun. And attention spans become less and less, and it is definitely about awareness and you know, making decisions for yourself.
We are lacking substance. Are we lacking vision? Must dig deep inside, find that inner wisdom. This world view is skewed, fame, power, love, and money. Fabricated stories.
Well, yeah. Now you got your second track that just came out, second single, "The Drugs Are Not Working," which once again I know focuses in on the media as well as in terms of propaganda that's run rampant these days that we see. I mean, so I mean, one thing I'm really enjoying about the record overall, in terms of the lyrics, is they're obviously you guys are talking about these socio-political issues, but it's not your typical divisive left versus right shit and all that kind of stuff. You're really hitting on more of the themes about media, like you said, media misinformation, corrupted politicians, all on both sides, all that. Really, essentially, these are the issues, obviously, that are driving that divisiveness. So, I mean, was the approach overall this record? It seemed like this was really what you guys wanted, or to sort of convey, I guess, to the listeners throughout the record in terms of some of those areas. It seems like this is really where the focus, I guess, lyrically was. And I guess that's something you guys have done over the years too. It's not anything that's new for the band, correct?
No, I mean, it's definitely not premeditated. I think it's just the state now, and also our experiences. There's multiple meanings behind the current track. The drugs are not working. And that has a lot of different ways that you can look at it. But I think we were very happy with, the messaging that's coming through on this album. And I think that Dan Neet is definitely coming through a space where his writing is, a bit more meaningful and completely transparent and real. And some of that could be just due to, his life and, the band, the different band members, the different things that we've experienced through this journey. So, yeah, I mean, I do think it is, you get a lot more out of something when you have something behind you that you feel is valid and you actually have something to say.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the pharmaceutical industry is just a massive, problem. It's not a good thing. I always think it's interesting that, we had a Secretary of Defense that was in Big Pharma before we invaded what became the epicenter of opioid production, of Afghanistan. It's very, hear too many people talking about that. It's like, oh, isn't that a coincidence? We have an opium epidemic after invading where opium comes from.
Yeah, exactly.
And this guy was in Big Pharma before that. It's like, of course, he's not with us anymore.
Sure.
But the effects.
Put two and two together. Yeah, exactly.
Right? So it's, and it's highly addictive stuff, and people just want to feel better, and I don't know, it's just ugly stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's talk about the music now in the record. I mean, it's obviously in the same arena as what you guys have done since your self-titled record came out in the late '90s. But there's some differences also. I mean, the track. I'll just give one example. The track "Turn Me On," which I think is one of the best tracks on the record too. Really has almost like a stoner metal Sabbath really vibe to it. So now with those other tracks, most of the tracks on, I guess, on the record are in that same vernacular that you guys have done, but there is some differences musically. So with the other tracks, we were talking about before that didn't make the record, did you guys really just in general explore any other, I guess, musical boundaries that you hadn't done before on, with these songs that you put together during those 2 years?
For sure. I feel like this album is more of a continuation of the last album, in that it's very similar, at least musically. Whereas there's a lot of material that is more avant-garde that really, I think Dan Neet hasn't really quite wrapped his brain around yet, like his approach, how he's going to approach it. And I think it was good. I applaud him on the choices of the songs that he resonated with, because it's not a big departure from what we were doing, which can alienate people. But we definitely have a lot of material that will be in a fresh direction than we've gone before. That's in the wings for sure. So
yeah, absolutely. Now, of course, too, when most people think of you guys, when they think of the Clay People, they're going to remember, as you mentioned before, the great track "Awake." That was on the Strangeland soundtrack back in the late '90s, which, of course, it was Dee Snider's film, and it had a bunch of just legendary metal bands on that soundtrack: Anthrax, Megadeth, Pantera, you just name it. How much really, just going back in time and speaking of the adventure, how much really did being obviously on that soundtrack do for the band at that time? Because I know back then, being a part of something like that really could, back then break a band. Was that just really the boost you guys needed back then? Because I know the band had been around. I know you guys came in, a little bit later than, the earlier stuff when it was more of a cold wave band. But really, how much did that, bring in terms of attention to the band just from being on that soundtrack?
Well, it was definitely an honor to be sharing a record with all those bands: Megadeth, Pantera, System of a Down. I mean, it's just fantastic. So it was an honor, and we got little royalties for about 10 years, from from like almost every country in the world. There was a little something, not enough to pay the bills, but it was like, oh wow, that's cool, isn't that cool? And I think it definitely. I have seen where people got into us from those soundtracks. So, it's just a great thing. And I mean, I think it would be awesome to be included on any soundtrack that would have us. It's just, an honor, really.
Yeah, I definitely think, I mean, the longer term payoff is, I think that part of that soundtrack helped us jump the shark into the algorithm of Spotify. So, I think that helped long term. And at that time, it was just, the awareness of the band was very strong. It definitely helped propel other doors opening to be able to do some other interesting things and other types of movie stuff, and working with larger studios and that type of thing. So it definitely helped us for sure.
Sure, no, absolutely. And now the thing is, after you guys released that debut, that self-titled album, except for that demo release that came out, a few years later, I mean, you guys really went away for a good about 10 years. I'm just curious as to really what happened and why did you guys essentially hang it up for years? Because I mean, that was a great record, and Awake was kind of really catching on, and then it just kind of, I didn't hear you guys for the longest time. Just curious, did you guys just kind of, was it just a natural thing where you just kind of went your ways and just like
I think the industry gets to you, so it was a pretty quick rocket ride on as far as notoriety. And we were fairly young. And when that was over, we had I believe it was Mercury was being acquired. And there was, the record company was stalling. We were ready to go. and management was changing, and you know, to be honest, there were some members in the band where it started to self-implode. And it doesn't feel, looking back on it, like the Clay People ever took a major hiatus. It seems like we kept playing, but there was long break periods, and I think that was the longest break period. I think at the end of the day, dude, I think we all knew that we were going to keep playing music together. But the reasoning behind it, there's so many different variations of reasoning. It wasn't any like one major catastrophe or anything, you know, that really hit us sideways. I think that when that acquisition happened at the major label status area, and we switched management, and we wanted to get out of that deal. That legal process took a very long time, and I think it kind of deflated the morale and the you know, just the forward movement of the band. We did go back in and record an EP pretty quickly after that, and that was the demo really for the next record. So we were prepared to go and hit it, and then I think we had some you know, just implosion in the band, I would say.
Yes, like you said, sounds like the music business, especially when you're talking about management and all that kind of stuff. It's obviously quite common for a lot of that to happen. It could, like you said, derail sort of momentum that a band has a lot of times too. You know?
Well, it's hard to sit around and wait, you know, I mean, especially when you're a musician and you're, you know, and you're, you know, 190%, you know, and that's all you do. You know, to sit around and wait after you know that people are listening to it and gravitating towards it, that's brutal. You know, it's brutal to, you know, that's a brutal position to be in. But to be honest with you, like sometimes I can't even remember what all those issues were and things. I was talking to Brian the other day, and I'm like, "Hey, when did this happen?" You know.
Top power, go, ghost lights, ignite, this is what is guaranteed. Scares the shit right out of me. Power on this machine, exo reanimate, needs momentum guaranteed. Scare the hell right into me. How naive, how naive, how naive that it fails to deliver. This is what is guaranteed. Inside I'm hollow, 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 hollow. This is me. This is now. And here I form again, downloading all this bytes, and it's a fucking bitch. Fourth dimensional matrix, defiant to the end. Ghost wishing lights in red, and here I bleed out. Can I be that hero, 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 hero? This is me. This is now.
All right, well, yeah, let's talk about also another really cool thing that's gone on with the band over the last 5 years or so is from the single Colossus on the record Demon Head. That was inspired by a comic book. Or inspired a comic book, excuse me. So the Clay People now are one of a very few, I think, not too many rock or metal bands that have actually had an internationally released comic. So talk about that and how that all came back. That's really cool.
Yeah. So a friend of mine I went to elementary school with, I've always kind of stayed in touch with, ended up being a pretty heavy hitter in the video game industry. And was a fan of the band, loved the band. I work in that industry, in the media industry. So, you know, when they heard it, when the company had heard the Colossus, it just really provided him a vision. He was really excited about the content of it and really could envision this being a video game. So really the initial conversations were about, you know, a video game. And they're moving into production on the video game. And they're also looking at using Colossus as a jumping point. So the comic is the origin story. And it was a really amazing process to be able to work with that talent, creating it. And it will continue. So they're going to be doing, like I said, a video game, and they're also scripting and talking to pushing this into a movie or a television show.
Oh, wow.
So, we're still pretty excited about that. And it's an honor because it's not written around necessarily the Clay people. Okay. It's the story and the origin story is definitely derived from us. But it's not like a tchotchke for the Clay people. This is a legit comic,
Well, just, getting back to the music too here, recently I spoke with, I interviewed Sin Kieran, who was, the ex-guitarist from Ministry, as well as Amir Darak from Orgy. Sometime last year I talked to him, and they both, were talking about, just in general, about really there's sort of a resurgence going on with industrial metal right now. I mean, just in general, there's a resurgence in a lot of the 90s sound. It's just coming back around now. So, I mean, you guys, obviously, I think this is a great time, obviously, to put out a great record like this and to get things back into full gear. I mean, do you guys, at this point, is there any desire, I guess, as a band to get back out there and really maybe try to gain new fans and achieve new goals? Or at this point, is it just really just simply for the love, of writing and recording together and releasing new music, and you just doing it really just for the fun of it? Or do you really have goals or aspirations right now as a band?
No, we definitely have goals and aspirations to get out there and play. I don't think it's necessarily the same aspirations as it was, 20 years ago.
We're playing tonight. We got
we're playing tonight.
We got a gig tonight.
I did see that up in Oneonta, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But we're definitely looking to get onto, some tours that are going to have, we definitely have aspirations to do it. We don't have to do it, but it's definitely something we want to do, and we're really just like trying to find the right opportunities at this point. So we have a run coming up in May, and then we're really looking to get onto a bill of some sort as soon as we possibly can. To be honest with you, I think we're at the point in our lives where we are playing music because we love to play music. So, it's all about playing. So yeah, we're definitely there. But you know, as far as aspirations to be a rock star, no. So you know, I think it's just aspirations to continue to play music more often and as much as possible. Be creative.
Yeah, as well as continue to challenge ourselves. You know, I feel like we're so much better now than we were when we were knocking on the door of you know, the super stardom. You know, in the late '90s. We're much better and still uncovering aspects of ourselves creatively within the context of the Clay People. It's just amazing. I'm like happy that we're still doing it because like, wow, who knew that we would try this or we do this or come up with these themes? You know, it's fantastic.
Yeah, no. Well, like you were saying, Brian, right? You guys before the pandemic hit, you did have that tour scheduled with Stabbing Westward, correct? So you guys were doing this obviously before all this went down. So which is cool. I mean, it's been a few years in the making, and but like you said, you obviously aspirations to be a rock star. I don't think that even exists anymore. Being a rock star, so you know,
yeah, it's true.
It's possible, you know.
Yeah,
it's just fun. I feel like it keeps us young. You know, just playing. At least for me personally, it still brings me back to why I started. You know, which was just I don't even know why I started. It was just because it's fun. You know, it's just it's a fun thing to do. It's just. So it brings me back to, you know, being a teenager and just, you know, and keeps us young, I think, you know, in some way, young at heart, you know, being creative, I think just keeps people fresh, you know, expressing themselves. So that's what it's about. It's not really about anything more than that, really. It's a complete blessing when somebody relates to it so much and they're like, they resonate with what we've done. It's just like, wow, that's so awesome. You know, it's just really, and it never gets old and it never, you know, ceases to surprise me. You know, it's fantastic.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. It's great, man. So, I mean, now that you guys have all those extra tracks, you know, what are you going to plan on doing with them? Are you guys going to, you know, obviously you can record, I mean, you know, maybe get back into the studio after a year or so and put out another record. I mean, because if you got that many tracks, like you said, you got about 3 or 4 albums worth of recordings there. I mean, so what's the plan? I mean, I know you're probably not thinking about that just yet since you just put this record out, but are you guys, you know, planning on doing anything with those tracks? You're just going to keep going?
Yeah,
I hope so. There's at least one full record there that if we really buckled down, some of the stuff I'm not sure if it really fits under the Clay People umbrella as it is right now. I don't know. I think that's really up to Dan Neet if he really resonates with it from a lyrical standpoint and vocally. Like I said, some of it's like really in left field compared to anything we've done before, but there's at least a record that we could flesh out easily, I think, you know, in the not too distant future.
Yeah, and the studio's, you know, it's our studio. So, you know, we also are working pretty closely with this guy, David Parker, who is engineering and semi-produces with us. Okay. So, you know, the plan is to get back in and start hitting it. But like as Brian said, just like the first record, or not the first record, but the record we just released, you know, it really is based on, you know, where from a lyrical and message standpoint, where Dan Neet's going to take it, you know, and see what's going to resonate there. You know, we'll definitely get on it and push it. That's part of my job, you know, is to push it forward. So, you know, the plan is that I would love to be finishing that record up at least in 12 to 18 months, have that completed.
Oh, fantastic, man. Absolutely great. Well, once again, the band is the Clay People. Cult Hypnotica is the album. It doesn't disappoint. If you love that 90s industrial metal sound with other heavy rock influences, it's right up your alley. And guys, where should we send the listeners to keep up, you know, with the band and check out merch and tour dates and all that good stuff?
You know, we at claypeople.com. We got Facebook, we got Instagram at claypeople1. That about covers
pretty much
it,
any digital outlet online, you know. So claypeople.com, you can find all the information.
Yeah, we got a cool website. Yeah. It looks cool.
Very cool. All right. Well, fantastic. Once again, the Clay People. And Brian and Dan, well, Dan's looks like he got cut out again, but thank you guys both for coming on. Appreciate it. Good luck with the show tonight. And yeah, we hope to see you on the road sooner than later.
Thank you, brother.
All right.
Thank you
for
very
having us.
much. Really appreciate it.